Back, a Fox News alert. An additional 5 classified documents have been found at President Biden's Wilmington home by special counsel Richard Sauber. In a statement, Sauber says he obtained those 5 pages on Thursday, and they were immediately taken into Justice Department custody by officials on scene. For more on this, we're going to go ahead and bring in today's political panel, that being talk show host Tony Katz, as well as Fox News contributor and radio show host Richard Fowler. Tony, let's go ahead and start with you. This breaking news: 5 more documents found. Apparently they were found on Thursday. The White House just had their last press conference on this yesterday, where there was no mention of any other documents. Do you think the White House is kind of taken by surprise that these new ones are found too? Or do you have concerns that maybe there's a lot more documents out there and they're just hoping that they don't come to light?
We have no reason not to think there aren't more documents out there. You know, I may have lost my voice a little bit, but I haven't lost my mind. This is some really bad work by the administration. Never mind having the documents, but being unable to share the story in one lump sum. Finding things on Thursday after this started on November 2nd is a really ugly, ugly look of incompetence from this administration, and that story is going to start growing.
Yeah. Richard, I want to turn to you here. Does this have a chance of stunting some of the momentum the Biden administration was starting to see? The president just went to the border for the first time ever, trying to show that he is taking it seriously. They were watching what was happening in the House with the GOP, with all the infighting that was going on. Now we have a brand new news cycle here that keeps renewing itself, if you will, every couple of days. Do you have concerns that this is essentially going to start overshadowing the president's agenda? And as more documents are found, this is really what everybody's going to be talking about?
Listen, there's no question that the president would rather us talk about his trip to the border and talk about the melee that's happening in the House Republican caucus. But the truth of the matter here is we're having a conversation about documents found in his house, and that is indeed problematic for this White House and the president. But I think here is the good news for the White House in this moment. In this moment, the White House can rely on the fact that they appointed a former federal judge to be their attorney general in Merrick Garland. And the first thing that Merrick Garland did here was he appointed a special counsel. And the special counsel is investigating this, which shows that what Biden has said all along: I will follow the rules, I will cooperate with the Justice Department, and I will appoint an attorney general that's above politics and above political reproach. And what this attorney general is doing is he's put somebody in there that is looking for these documents and finding them, and that shows that it's working. And it's also worth pointing out here that in the case of President Trump, there was a subpoena that got these documents and not cooperation.
Tony, and none of that matters, Richard. If that's the best that the White House can put out there, it's a worse week for Biden than I thought.
And we're going to have to see where this goes.
Let's bring back the political panel, talk radio show host Tony Katz and Fox News contributor Richard Fowler. Tony, given that we now have the discovery of 3 different sets of documents in 3 different locations spread out over the course of a week in terms of public revelations here, does there come a point at which, in the interest of national security, the Fed needs to get involved and search that residence top to bottom?
I'm actually surprised that a lot of that searching hasn't happened already, because you make a good point. We're talking about the public revelations. This started November 2nd, 6 days before the midterms. It's been over 2 months. But let's go back to a question you were asking Lucas Tomlinson there at the White House, because that's the transparency conversation. As Peter Doocy was pointing out, one of the things we don't know: who went to that Delaware house. There are no logs that we get regarding the Secret Service about who has visited Joe Biden at that house, where these documents are just laying about like so many M&Ms in a bowl, or hard candies that you would get from your Meemaw. Who has been visiting, who has had access to them, is a huge question, and now a national security question. And as for how this affects the Biden administration, there's really only 1 or 2 conversations. Either Joe Biden is criminally mishandling classified documents, or Joe Biden is old and incompetent and doesn't know he has them. That's a terrible place for the White House to be.
The documents, we know, have been at that residence possibly for as long as 6 years now. Richard, what do you say?
Look, there's no question that the Biden White House is in a little bit of hot water here. And I think in crisis communications, the first thing that you want to do is you want to get all the information and you want to put it out to the public in a meaningful way so that you can say, here's what we know and here's what we don't know. And that didn't happen here. And so you can't defend that. And I think that's why the media and why Peter and the White House team at every press and every media organization is chomping at the bit to get the White House to answer these questions.
Well, not only that, Richard, but as Bill just talked about with Peter, they have chosen not to take hold of the narrative. They could have offered this information over the last couple of days, but withheld it.
I completely agree there. I'm not denying that. And I think what they've got to do in this moment. Oh, listen, I'm sure if you talk to Karine Jean-Pierre, if you talk to Kate Bedingfield, you talk to anybody in that White House press shop, what they would say is, we wish we could have gotten all this information out to the press in one big press release that said all the documents we had and what we're doing moving forward, right? And this is not happening. We're giving you drip, 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 which allows us not to focus on what we want to focus on, which is the melee happening on Capitol Hill under Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Now, with that being said, the good news here for this White House, right, and the thing that they can point to is the fact that
at this point, the House is sworn in. They're moving forward.
Well,
they're legislating.
Not necessarily. I mean, you still have new evidence about George Santos. We're not sure if that's his real name. Now we know he has a Ponzi scheme going on. But I digress. Let's get back to these documents, right? And I think what's happening here, and what the White House can point to, is they have appointed an attorney general. That attorney general has followed federal law. He's done in an abundance of caution. He's appointed a special counsel. The special counsel is reviewing these documents, and what we've heard Tony talk about is a lot of speculation, right? We don't know what the special counsel is doing in this moment. We don't know if that special counsel is in front of a federal judge acquiring a subpoena. We don't know if that special counsel has been granted the privilege to search the Delaware residence of the president. We don't know what's happening, and that could be happening all behind closed doors. So before we speculate and make assumptions about what's happening, let's let this special counsel do his job.
The Biden administration has been touting their upper hand here as being that of transparency. They said, we have been forthcoming as compared to President Trump. They accused him of trying to cover up the classified documents in his house. They are losing that argument every time a new document is revealed to the public now.
You know, as I said a little bit earlier, I may have lost my voice, but I haven't lost my mind. What speculation, Richard, are you discussing? Classified documents going back to his time as vice president. Hold on, Richard.
China. I'm
were
discussing
found
your
in his
speculation
offices.
about who's
Richard,
at his house.
That's
I'm
not
discussing
speculation.
all the speculation that you made in your past comment.
Richard.
Yes, that is speculation.
It's not speculation that classified documents were found at an office of the UPenn Center, his private office in the UPenn Center, at his home, and next to the Corvette, which, thank goodness, for Americans
the reason
is locked.
people are speculating about who has been in and out of the Biden's residence in Wilmington
that again is not a conversation of speculation. That is the White House can let us know.
FOIA request.
The White House can let us know
once
who
again,
is at
any
the
moment
Biden
they can
house,
tell
and they're
us.
not.
That's right. Richard?
Once again, here's what happened once these documents came out. Immediately, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, appointed a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney from Chicago to investigate this. He's been on the case since November. Right? That's what we know. This is the fact pattern here. Number one, the only reason why he's still not on this case is because he's going into the private sector. The second thing we saw happen this week is this. A special counsel was appointed, somebody who has a history of dealing with prosecuting elected officials. He's now on the case. There's a lot of stuff happening in the background. The Biden White House and the president, as well as the president's attorneys, have been forthcoming. And even when you listen to what Peter Doocy said in his comments there, tells you how transparent this White House is being. They're telling you that their lawyers, the president's lawyers, excuse me, I let you finish, let me finish. They're telling you that their lawyers don't have top secret clearance. So when we see a classified document, we're pumping the brakes and we're calling the Justice Department. That is transparency at its finest. You didn't get that from the Trump administration. You didn't get that from Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago. That tells you that I'm not saying the president's doing a good job here. And I'm not telling you that it's not problematic. I'm telling you that this is problematic. And at least the president's being transparent to some extent.
Richard, we got to leave it there. Tony, you got a few seconds.
Thank you so much. The argument for transparency is not really a good one coming from you today, Richard. And the idea that you are touting that the Attorney General did his job by appointing a special prosecutor, I mean, we're now applauding the progressive left for doing their job. Here we go. I'll give you the attaboy.
Merrick,
the
to be
issue
fair,
here is
Merrick
there
Garland's
isn't
not
a
the- Merrick Garland is a
transparency,
federal judge. He's
and
not
it
the
is
progressive
not
left.
me nor the political right that is engaging this conversation about there's no transparency. It's the White House press corps. What Peter Doocy was talking about is a conversation happening all over that press briefing room that they aren't being told. This got known on November 2nd, and we had a midterm election on November 8th, and no one told a soul. We didn't know until there was the CBS News breaking that news. I believe it was them. I just want to make sure I give credit where it's due. Do not think for a second, America, that this has been a transparent White House when you know for a fact it hasn't been.
Also, yesterday, both the president and the press secretary had the opportunity directly to tell reporters about the latest development and declined to do so. Okay, guys, we got to leave it. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll have you back.